Silence is Not Golden is the rather amazing 17th episode of the 6th season of Full House. This is directed by Zwick, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And I will say straight up, it's difficult. It's a very difficult episode to watch, but for all of the right reasons. I will talk about each of the parts of the narrative. In turn, we have a story with Michelle and Denise. Interestingly, the opening scene actually is part of the main narrative, which very rarely happens. Usually we just have a cold open, and this is a little different. I'll talk about that in a moment. We also have Jessie, and then we have the story with Stephanie, and Michelle and Denise are watching TV at the start of the episode, and they decide to call in the TV show to hear some jokes. And obviously this is an expensive service to call, and they do this, and they don't necessarily realize it's expensive. And Michelle had asked Danny for permission when he was busy doing something else, so he didn't really hear her, so she didn't hear the word no. So she and Denise decide to call, and they tell jokes throughout the episode. Some of the jokes are horrendous, some of them are pretty decent, and ultimately she gets caught. Danny finds out, and Michelle gets into a bit of trouble. And I think there's a good lesson there for anybody watching this, for younger viewers specifically, that these things cost a lot of money and you probably shouldn't phone them. And it's a nice part of the narrative. Jesse is working on a book report. He's going to be working with Steve. Initially, they're planning on reading half of the book each, then combining their thoughts. But Jesse realises that what's the point? Just read the whole book and get the full experience. So it's a nice little bit of padding, a nice subplot that works really well, and a decent message there about doing the work. And also Jesse and Steve, I thought, worked really well together. I really liked that. And then we come to Stephanie. And when they're in the classroom, Stephanie and a kid called Charles, played by J.D. Daniels, are bickering a little bit. Charles said some not nice things, Stephanie retorts, and the teacher decides that this is a great opportunity for their next writing assignment called Finding the Best in People. And I think this is a really great idea. I would have hated it. I absolutely would have detested this idea growing up, but children in the class are being paired with each other, presumably children who don't necessarily spend a lot of time together, such as Stephanie and Charles, and they have to interview each other and write a report about some good qualities in that person. Obviously, the thinking there is that Stephanie and Charles are bickering, they don't see anything good about each other, but here they have the opportunity. And Charles comes over, he's not very nice, he's very unlikable, but quite quickly that changes, because Michelle comes up when Stephanie and Charles are in the bedroom doing their homework, and she tells Stephanie that she's in big trouble because she forgot to take the garbage out. And Stephanie kind of grimaces at this because it's not the first time she's forgotten. She's going to get into trouble. And Charles said something that was horrendous, but also very sweet, because he said to her, just think of something funny when you're getting it. I like the fact that he recognised that Stephanie was going to have a difficult time of it, and he offered her something that might genuinely be helpful for her. And that's not within his character that we've seen. But of course, Stephanie latched onto the words getting it, and she asked, getting what? And we find out that Charles's father hits him. And Stephanie told him, you have to tell somebody, and he told her that she wasn't allowed to tell anybody. And he said, I don't care if you swear on your mother's life. And it just went from bad to worse in terms of being really emotional, because of course Stephanie then said that her mother isn't alive. And Charles has the same experience. He doesn't have his mother around either. And it was difficult, but it gets even more emotional because Charles runs off in a panic. He realizes he's going to get into trouble for his father not being aware of where he was, and he goes home, and Stephanie is in school, and we learn that Charles has fallen down the stairs, with the heavy implication that he did not fall. He was pushed. And it was really frustrating, but also believable, because that was the perfect moment for Stephanie to confide in her teacher. And I think for maybe 2 seconds, it felt like she was going to, but she remembered the promise she made to Charles, and she can't break the promise. But time goes on, and he still hasn't been to school, and a week passes, it might have been a little bit longer, and she does eventually tell Jessie. And Jessie obviously takes this seriously, and he makes some phone calls, and he tells Stephanie. Still, they don't hear anything. He doesn't come back to school. Jesse follows it up and he finds out that Charles had been placed in foster care, which for me as a viewer was great news. Fantastic. Get him out of that abusive home. But Stephanie began to panic. They've taken Charles out of his home. For a young child, it would be very difficult to see why that would be a good thing. Because, of course, she's not able to see the big picture. She obviously doesn't necessarily know the benefits of being in foster care with regards to them outweighing being in an abusive, potentially life-threatening home. That's not to say that every foster care placement is happy and healthy, because there are, as we know from many tragic stories, that often it can be a very brutal experience. But there are plenty of foster carers who are loving and caring and have the time to help somebody in a situation as Charles is. And I think there's obviously one massive takeaway from this. If somebody is in need, don't worry about breaking your promise. Don't be scared that you're going to let them down by telling somebody, because it's better to save their life than to keep a promise and for them to end up severely injured or worse. And it's just, it's so difficult to watch as an episode, but it's so powerful and so well done. It's believable. I believed Stephanie right throughout this. I think the way she responded to everything, while frustrating because I wanted her to tell her teacher when she had that perfect opportunity, I very much believe the way she handled this. And it was difficult. And Charles became, I don't want to say instantly likable, but instantly when we hear that about him, I'm no longer annoyed by his attitude. I'm more concerned for his well-being. And I think that that's another great attitude. If somebody is outwardly very nasty and abrasive, maybe that's just who they are. Or maybe it's their response to put up a shield in front of them because they're hurting in other ways. And I just think there are some really strong takeaways from this. It's an incredibly powerful episode. We do have moments of comedy, of course, but for the most part, I'd say it's one of the heavier episodes. And I think they did an amazing job with it. Silence is Not Golden is a really fantastic episode of Full House.